It's Tuesday, October 15th. I'm Amanda Gear, and this is The Signal. We only have a few short shows left of the radio grow season. How's your garden growing this year? What are you up to at the end of the season? You need some tips or just want to give us a grow update? Call in. Todd Bolan's here to answer all your questions. Horticulturist from the Munn Botanical Garden, Todd Bolan, is here with us today. Thank you for joining us, Todd.
Oh, delighted to be here.
Excellent. How's your garden growing this year?
Oh, my own garden. My own garden hasn't been too bad. If you could keep enough water to it. It was a hard winter, or hard summer, for water.
Yeah.
Certainly here in St. John's, we were pretty close to being under drought conditions for most of the summer. And I think for the month of July and August, we only had an inch and a half of rain both times, which is exceptionally low compared to, what we normally would get, which probably would be 3 to 4 inches for each month during the summer. But, and we've been finding that for the last couple of years, probably the last 3 or 4 years, that the summer's been getting drier and drier and drier. This is our climate change. It seems like here in St. John's anyway, whether or not it's going to continue this way in the future. But certainly we're starting to see, like I said, our summers are getting quite dry here.
Absolutely. Here on the Avalon today, though, things are looking pretty wet and rainy.
Yeah, well, I always tell people that with the climate change now, we're almost developing a monsoon climate. So you can almost mark it down that come October, you'll hardly go 24 hours without rain falling in some way, shape, or form. Maybe a lot or maybe very little. Really, even so far this month in October, and it hasn't been a lot of rain. I mean, this morning we had some pretty big downpours here, but there's not much falling out there now. I think we're back to just being typical fog again for here in St. John's. But, yourself, it'll continue like this now right through to November, and we'll see very little sun. I hope everyone enjoyed the sun this summer, because we certainly had plenty of it. So this was the summer to enjoy the sun.
We really did, and that sun helped everything grow, but we could have used a little bit more rain.
Yes, definitely.
So if you want to get in on the conversation today, give us a call, give us a text. The numbers are 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. Send us a text if that's easier. I know a lot of you have our number already programmed in your phone, 709-327-8206. You can always send us a note through email if that's your preference at thesignal@cbc.ca. So let us know how your garden grew this year and what problems, if any, that you ran into. So, Todd, tell us what's going on at the Botanical Garden this month.
Yeah, so, we're sort of gearing down the season, so to speak. There's not a lot in the actual garden these days, although the trails are beautiful if you like to walk on the nature trails. Lots of color now. It's been a pretty good year, actually. I think that the dry summer has allowed for nicer fall colors than we oftentimes get. So, it's always lovely to come up and walk on the trails up there. But the main thing now, from now until the 30th of the month, will be the Halloween Howl. So that's our annual event. It's a family-based program. Bring up your youngsters in costume, even better.
Ooh,
and
spooky.
And there's lots of different types of events that are taking place up there, and different types of walks. And they do haunted walks, and they're doing evening walks as well. So check out the website to get the details on that. I should note that the garden is now closed for the month of October. We're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. Okay. But from Wednesday to Sunday till the end of the month, we'll have the Halloween Howl. And then the garden will actually close then on the 2nd of November. We'll be closed then for the month of November to prepare for the next big event, the biggest event of the season for us, which is the Merry and Bright Festival.
Yeah, a very big deal, the Merry and Bright Festival. Everyone rushes to get their tickets first.
Yeah.
Huge.
I think the tickets don't go on sale, though, until November. But
Okay.
again, we'll have lots of announcements on our Facebook and whatnot once we're ready to start selling the tickets.
And how many folks does it take to get Merry and Bright all together?
Well, there's 3 main people. There's myself and Chris Langmead, who's our grounds maintenance fella. He's sort of the the driving force, we'll say, behind it. And we usually hire on a third person just for the month of October and November and December to assist with that. So I'm really happy this year that I actually managed to get one of my past students, summer students, who just graduated and was looking for some work. So he was looking for work at the garden, as it turned out. I said, well, I can get you work. I said, it might not be doing plants. But he was quite happy to get to work for 3 months.
For sure.
And he was a wonderful student, and he's been up there now for a couple of weeks, and he's working out really, really well. So it makes, we have a lot of fun when we're hanging up the lights.
For sure.
And, so that's what it is. So basically 3 people that, for the most part, that take care of all the outside decorations on that.
Small but mighty team there, Mr. Bolan. We were just talking before we started the show, and you told me that you got something exciting coming up, a trip. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'm the president of the North American Rock Garden Society. Okay, so I'm the first Canadian president they've ever had. And the society's been on the go for 70-odd years, so it's the first time the Canadian was ever a president. But so within that society, besides being the president for the next couple of years, I'm also in charge of what they call the tours committee. Okay. And so within our society, for society members, one of the benefits of being a society member is that we organize tours to different parts of the world to see alpine flowers. So next week, we have a tour set up to go to Crete. So Crete is one of these few places in the world where they actually have a number of bulbs in particular that actually flower in the fall of the year. So some of the listeners may be familiar with autumn crocus, and we do have several different types of autumn crocus blooming at the garden right now. So we will go to Crete and we'll actually see these growing in the wild. So it'll be quite exciting to see that. Some people may recognize cyclamen. Cyclamen are a popular houseplant at different times of the year, especially during the winter months. They grow wild in Crete, and they start flowering this time of year as well. So there'll probably be around 15 to 20 different plants that we'll hope to see. And so we'll head over there next week, and there are 16 of us in total. I'll be wandering around Crete looking for flowers.
That's so exciting. I would love to go on a flower and plant world tour. Can you
there
imagine?
You go, right? I mean, of course, the great thing about Crete is that there's so many monasteries, lots of old ruins, because, people have been settled there for thousands of years, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll have the opportunity to visit these old ruins because, as it turns out, a lot of these native wildflowers grow in amongst those ruins. So we get the best of both worlds. Evenings will be, restaurants with local cuisine. So, we have a week over there. I must say, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh my goodness, you're making me jelly, especially with this weather. And
I know.
Thinking about
it's
the
supposed
beautiful
to be sunny every day.
I'm like, oh gosh. Speaking of vacation, Adam Walsh is on vacation right now, so I'm sitting in with him. I'm Amanda Gear. Get in on this conversation for, an autumn gardening conversation. Give us a call, 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. Fire us the text, 709-327-8206. We got a full 55 minutes here chatting about all things gardening, all things weather. So before we got into this conversation, you and I had been talking about climate change and what we've been seeing and the difference in the last few years in the grow season.
Right.
So as a horticulturist, why is it important, especially in urban areas during this time of climate change, for us to understand gardening and horticulture and being sustainable with our own food sources? How does that all interplay, Todd?
Well, it's one of these things that I'm finding, because our summers seem to be getting warmer, and we're always challenged here we'll say all of Newfoundland for that part, that mostly for vegetables we're growing primarily root vegetables, right? So, we can do potatoes very well. We can do beets and turnip and carrot. And then, of course, the leafy veggies. But we often had a hard time growing things like tomatoes, peppers, corn, things like, what we call the warm season crops. But now we're starting to see a change there. And, at one time, even at the garden, the only time we could grow tomatoes was inside the greenhouse. Mm-hmm. But now we're growing them outside. And corn, a lot of people are growing corn these days. And this is the first year that we've tried corn up at the garden. And I was so surprised at how well it grew. Mm-hmm. Beautiful ears of corn until the rats ate them. But that's another story.
We'll get to the rats.
We'll get to the rats in a moment. But they did really, really well. So, the fact that our summers are beginning warmer and sunnier, That's a good thing because it does allow us now to be able to grow more things ourselves. I mean, still, we have a very short growing season. We're always going to be reliant here on, going to the grocery stores, picking, getting all our fruits and vegetables, for the most part, all being imported. We are seeing a lot more community gardens popping up now across the province, which is great to see. I know places like out in the Ghouls and out in CBS, there's a lot of local farmers out there now, and you're seeing lots of little roadside stands popping up now, which is absolutely wonderful as well. And of course, we're starting to see some of the local produce now in the supermarkets as well. But I always like to support the local, right? So if you have any kind of community markets that you can visit yourself, farmers markets, those are the places, we want to try to support the local people here. And the more that we're supporting them, hopefully the more they will grow because they'll know that the demand is there. And all that just works out better for us in the long term.
Absolutely. Every year, this time of year, my vegetable lady is out with her truck at Holy Spirit High School, and her produce is the best that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Everything is just so well taken care of, so clean. This year, her carrots were a massive, huge carrots.
Right.
The parsnip were so tasty. I'm just always really impressed with the local produce that I can get here.
And it makes a huge difference because a lot of the veggies that we get in our supermarkets are being grown somewhere on the mainland, probably Quebec or Ontario or somewhere down in the States. And you don't know how long they've been bouncing around before they ever turn up in our stores. So you lack that nice natural sweetness. Yeah. And I know myself, when we grow carrots, and we only grow carrots at the garden every second year because we have a carrot rust fly. And I found that by only growing them every second year, I can keep against problems with the rust fly, right? So they don't seem to build up the population. And but I mean, pulling carrots out of your own garden, I mean, it's just so sweet compared to these very blah tasting carrots you buy in the supermarkets that are coming from the mainland.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're probably sweet when they first come out of the ground wherever they're grown. But like you say, by the time they turn up over here, it's weeks, if not months.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was younger, my father in Happy Valley Gooseby always had a massive garden. He was quite known for how well he could garden, especially his carrots.
Right.
But I think I would steal half the carrots out of the garden before harvest season because they're so sweet and so tender.
And, they've been getting, even in Labrador, has been getting much better summers these days, too.
This year was unreal.
And so, we're all seeing that effect where the summers are getting a bit longer, a bit warmer, and that can make a huge difference in your, what you get at the end of the season in regards to growing your crops.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Follow-up question now about carrots. They're so delicious and so good, but how can we store them so that they're not getting mushy or going stale before they should?
Right. So what I used to do, and I don't grow carrots myself because my garden now is getting too much shade because of my neighbor's trees. So I've just gone now into basically growing just flowers. But years ago, I grew carrots, and I usually stored them over the winter in dry sawdust.
Okay.
Right, and that would keep the moisture within the root. I have since then read that if you it depends on how many carrots you have, but if you wrap each individual carrot in tin foil, they stay crisp and nice and lush and beautiful for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Good tip.
Right? So that's another, if you only have a small number of carrots, even if you're buying, like in the middle of winter, carrots from the supermarket, and sometimes when they're in your refrigerator, because they've been bouncing around for a few months, they seem like they go soft pretty quickly. If you wrap tin foil around them, it seems to keep the moisture within it, right? So, because basically your carrot or your turnip, beets, things like that, it's essentially a way of the plant trying to survive the dormant season, right?
Okay.
So they're trying to keep that moisture within the root to keep the plant alive through the winter. And of course, in the wild, then the plant would sprout up again in the spring of the year. And people will know that if you leave a carrot in the ground next spring, up come your leaves. Yeah. And then it usually flowers, and it's no good to eat at that point. But so the whole idea is just like if you're digging up your dahlias, right? So now this is the time of the year. Now any day we'll be getting our killing frost. And of course, we're ready now to basically plant our tulips and our daffodils. So if you have things like begonias and gladiolus and dahlias that you need to get up in order to put your bulbs in, you're going to want to try to store them over the winter in the exact same way you're trying to store your carrots.
Okay.
Right? So dry peat moss or dry sawdust, wood shavings, Any of that is great for storing your dahlias and your begonias. Also great for storing your carrots too.
Great advice. And other root vegetables, I know, especially here in Newfoundland, we try to keep them as long as we can over the winter.
Yeah.
What's the best way to store our root vegetables as a whole?
Well, cool. You want them cool and you want it fairly humid, right? So people years ago, of course, in Newfoundland had root cellars. And the root cellars would keep the temperature probably just 3 or 4 degrees, just above freezing. Mm-hmm. And usually the humidity in there was 90 to 100%, right? So, and of course, carrots would be perfectly fine for that kind of scenario as well, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, most of us don't have the luxury of having root cellars anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate that in my basement, I have one section of my basement where it's not as insulated, and the temperature in there will drop down to about 8 degrees in the winter, and that still works out really, really well for storing potatoes and turnip and carrot and things along those lines as well. Okay. So even if you have, as long as it's frost-free, even if you have a garage, if your garage is fairly cool, frost-free, then that's another place where you could be storing them.
Okay, that's great advice. So as we're winding down, getting our beds, all prepped for the spring, what should we be doing to our soil right now? Yeah,
so this is the time of the year now really where you want to put your lime. Okay, so if you're liming your garden or you're liming your lawn, it takes lime about 6 months before it really breaks down and starts to become useful to the plants, right? So the thing is, if you're liming your lawn in the spring, it's really not until the fall of the year that it's really starting to finally provide a benefit, right? And the problem here in Newfoundland, of course, our soil is very acidic, and a lot of plants, especially your lawn, prefer soil that's more on the alkaline side, so a little bit sweeter. And some veggies like it a little bit sweeter as well. Now, as it turns out, things like potatoes, they don't mind it being a bit acidic. Cabbage and turnip are fine for that as well. But you'll find that, our natural pHs around here are probably around 4.5 to 5. So, a little bit of extra lime added to the ground on a regular basis helps to bring the pH up, 5.5 to 6 range is a bit better for lawns. We want it up closer to 6.5, really, to keep your lawn happy. So by doing it now, this time of year, you got the whole winter for that lime to start to break down. Of course, all the rain and all the snow, when that starts melting, that will help to dissolve the limestone as well. And then in the spring of the year, when you're ready to plant, your soil has already been sweetened up over the winter, right? So that's a good thing there. If you're putting in things like kelp, okay, of course, a lot of people in outdoor communities are taking advantage. Now we have all these fall storms, so you're getting a lot of kelp washing up on the beaches. Now's a good time to gather that to use in your garden because you don't want the salt water to be directly in contact with your roots in the spring of the year. If you put the kelp on your beds this time of year, again, all the rain and all the snow will leach out all that. And then if that's dug into the ground, that'll be helping to rot them over the winter and be there basically for the benefit of the plants come the spring of the year.
Great advice. You want to get in on this conversation? Give us a call. The numbers are 709-722-7111 and 1-800-563-8255. Or you can fire us a text, 709-327-8206. And we have a text. So I'll read you a text there now, Todd.
Okay.
Let's see what we got today. This person says, my raspberry plants, she's not sure the name of that type of raspberry plant, have decided that it's time to flower again.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, goodness. Okay. And I've seen some very nice berries. The problem is that they aren't supposed to do that now. And I'm wondering if I should cut off the flowers, and will they flower again in the spring? Are these canes done now that they've flowered?
Okay, so it sounds to me there is such a thing as ever-bearing raspberries. Mm-hmm. They're not recommended for Newfoundland because their growing season is too short to get the second crop to ripen the fruit. Same thing with strawberries. You can get ever-bearing strawberries as well, and they do the same thing. Generally around here, they very rarely get a chance to ripen the second crop. Unless you have them in the greenhouse, then you might have a fighting chance. So as long as, those canes that are flowering now, chances are will die because that's typically what raspberries do, right? They flower. The first year they just produce leaves on an unbranched stem, which we refer to as the cane. Mm-hmm. And then in the second year, the cane will then produce little side branches where the flowers form and the fruit forms, and then that cane dies over the winter. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're what we call a biennial stem. on the raspberries. So chances are these particular ones now, so what would normally happen in a long growing season, you get a cane growing up in the middle of summer after your first crop has been harvested. They would flower, but then you get another set of canes growing up. Our season's too short for doing that, right? So there's no guarantee. Maybe it's just an aberrant thing happening because we had such a dry summer and now we're getting lots of rain that suddenly some of these plants think it's spring all over again, right? So that could be it. So if this particular grower, if this is like brand new raspberries that she purchased recently, it's possible she may have purchased an ever-bearing type. Okay, and that could be what the problem is. Otherwise, if it was ones she's had for years and suddenly this year it's doing this, it may be just a symptom of the fact that we had such a dry period that a lot of the plants sort of went a little bit dormant in late summer. And now with the rains, now they're putting on a second flush of growth again, right? Because they sort of think it's spring all over again. Which is not a good thing to have happen in the big scheme of things. So it's hard to say. At this stage in the game, she more than likely will not get any ripe fruit. It's just too late in the season now. So it's probably just as well off to cut off those canes anyway. And then hopefully next year, she may not get any fruit because more than likely what will happen, the plant will send up new canes next spring, right? Because they won't flower till the following year. All right, so she might, as a result of this, not have any fruit for next year.
Yeah, you might miss a year, but that's fine. She also adds, this texter also adds, P.S. I just planted my garlic and I'm afraid they are going to drown.
No, they won't drown. I mean, if your soil is reasonably well drained and if you've grown garlic before and they've been successful, then you should have no problems. I know up at the garden now I have to get my garlic put in up to Botanical Garden before I leave next week. So I'm just waiting now. It's pretty wet today, so it won't be happening now. But I think later in the week it's supposed to get a bit drier. I think by Friday, hopefully, we'll have a couple of days to get the excess moisture out of the ground, and I'll be ready then to put my garlic in there. So any listeners out there, if you're growing garlic, get ready. Get ready for the next. As soon as the rain now dries up a little bit, I would say probably by this weekend, or in long range, this weekend is supposed to be sunny, and it's the perfect time of the year now to get your garlic poked into the ground.
For new garlic growers like myself, what is the best way to go about it? Like, where should I plant my garlic? What conditions do they prefer? How do I protect it all winter long until it starts growing up?
Right. Okay, so garlic, basically, you're treating them the same way as you do your planting your tulips and your daffodils at this time of the year. So your soil should be well drained. It needs to be fully sunny. It needs a nice sunny spot. And you just break off each individual clove. Plant those cloves about 3 inches or so deep. All right. Usually when it comes to bulbs, even if it's like a tulip or a daffodil, you plant them about 2.5 to 3 times the height of the bulb is how deep you plant them, right? So a garlic clove is usually about 1 inch high, so plant them 3 inches deep.
Okay.
Right. If it was a daffodil bulb and it was 2 inches high, plant them 6 inches deep. Right. So that's a general rule. I find a lot of people don't plant them deep enough.
Okay.
I think it's better to plant them a little bit too deep than too shallow for the most part. So just be careful. You think, oh my God, this poor little garlic clove is so deep, but no. I mean, try to get it down about to 3 inches. Like I said, well drained, fully sunny site. They will just sit there. They will not germinate. They'll just like your tulips and daffodils, they'll wait till the spring before they come up. Up at the Botanical Garden, I don't do anything. I just plant them, and they're just left. The ground is open, gets the freeze-thaw cycle, and then come, end of April, beginning of May, I'll pop my little sprouts. And then, by the time August rolls around, I'm harvesting them.
Yum.
Right? So, yeah, it's great, because I know when I first started growing garlic years ago, I didn't realize you had to plant them in the fall of the year. And I used to plant them in the spring. And then I always wondered, why are my garlic so darn small? They're just miserable, right?
I did
what am I doing wrong, right?
Year.
And then finally, I clued into the fact, you plant them in the fall. Oh, okay. So and that makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind, too, if you're going to be a new garlic grower, is what you'll find in July, they'll try to produce flowers. Okay, what we call the scape, the garlic scape. Don't let them produce their flowers, okay? Because that'll drain away from the cloves. So as soon as those little garlic scapes start to form on the top, and you'll see them because they'll be curled up, and you'll see like a little knob on the end of this little curl.
Yeah.
We cut those off. They make great pesto.
Oh, they're delicious.
Or put them in a stir fry or whatever, or soup or whatever turns your crank in that regards for cooking. But yeah, cut off those scapes. And then at that point, then you'll find the bulbs will start then to start to bulk up. Okay, so the nutrients then from the leaves will start to go back into the bulb. Okay, and then
Great
you'll find that by mid to late August, you'll start to see a lot of the leaves are yellow. That's the time then to pull them up and dry them.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great advice. This might be a silly question, but I always wonder this when I'm planting stuff. When I'm planting the garlic, should I put the pointy side
End
facing up?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So and that's the case for all our bulbs. Tulips and daffodils are pretty easy. You know, there is a pointed end and a non-pointed end. Things like crocuses are a little more tricky. Because the bulb is sort of almost like a football shape, you know, a bit flattish. But generally with crocuses, you'll see the little sprouts on the top.
Okay.
Right? Even this time of year when you buy them at the nurseries, you'll see the little sprouts on the top. So those are next year's shoots. And then you'll be a flat end, and the flat end is where the roots are going to form.
Okay.
So if you see the little sprouts, poke them up skywards, the flat end down. And the same thing will apply then to other, what we call the lesser bulbs, things like grape hyacinths and things like that. Usually, again, you can see that there's a little bit of a pointier end. The only thing that's really weird are anemones. Okay. And you can buy what they call the spring flowering anemones. They're beautiful plants. I think more people should be growing them. A lot of people look at the bulbs and they say, what in the heck do I do with this? Because it looks like a little dried up, little bits of dried up turd to look at, or little bits of dried up wood. You know, and you look at it and say, where in the heck is the top? Where in the heck is the bottom? And one beauty thing about them is that if you plant them upside down, the plants have a tendency to straighten themselves up. Okay.
They're
so
tough.
They're pretty tough. And again, they're sort of somewhat two-dimensional. All right, in that regard, so they're sort of somewhat flattened, even though they're irregular in shape. So if you can't tell top and the bottom, plant them vertical.
Okay.
So just plant them vertical, and essentially then the roots will grow out and grow down, the sprouts will grow out and they'll grow up. And then over time, the plants will straighten themselves up. But they're a beautiful spring flowering bulb. The flowers look almost like a little pink or purple or a white daisy.
Sweet.
You know, and they're very low. And the great thing about them is that after the flowers have faded, the foliage disappears about 2 or 3 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
Right? So any gardeners out there, if you're growing tulips and daffodils and you want to keep them growing year after year, you need to let the foliage die away naturally, okay, for the energy to get back into that bulb. And the things with daffodils in particular, it could be green up until almost the end of July, right? And they look really messy and ugly in the garden. So, you know, I try to plant daffodils in particular, probably like say close to hostas, right? So the hostas can grow up and hide that ugly old foliage as my daffodils are dying down. But the anemones are great because the foliage looks almost like little ferns, so it's pretty foliage, even though, you know, and then usually like within 2 or 3 weeks of the flowers fading, the foliage just disappears. Right? So you're not left with this untidy foliage for long periods of time.
I hate that. When you get that like browning, wilty foliage around.
It just looks really horrible, right? So I can't stress enough about the advantages of growing anemones. So if you can find them, you generally have to go to the nurseries. Box stores generally don't sell them. Right? But the nurseries oftentimes do, and they come. You can get them a white variety, a pink variety, and a purpley blue variety.
Great advice. We just got another text in there, Todd. I have an old, very tall elderberry bush that is quite leggy, with most of the leaves and berry growth at the top. Should I give it a heavy pruning at this time of year? It's at least 12 feet tall. Yeah.
So elderberries generally produce most of their flowers and their fruit on younger canes. Okay. So, and this applies to a lot of fruiting shrubs that are out there that you might grow in your garden. Like people grow chokeberry. There's some ornamental chokeberries that you can get on the market these days. And they produce a nice heavy crop of purpley black fruit. The elderberries, of course, produce their blackberries as well. And then, of course, there's the red elderberry, which is a native elderberry. And they will flower best and fruit best on stems that are probably like between 3 and 5 years old. All right? So what happens, of course, is that if you don't get a lot of new canes growing, then the plant just grows up taller and taller and taller and gets leggier, and you just get all the leaves and all the fruit way up around the top, and there's nothing on the bottom. So I find that with elderberries in particular, chokeberries, you can do this as well, that every 3 to 4 years, I like to hack them right to the ground. Okay? I bring them down to probably cut stems to about 6 inches of the ground. They'll flush up in the spring of the year with brand new, really robust, because you have all those roots not having to service any stems, so all that energy goes into the new growth, and they just go gangbusters. You'll get canes that'll grow up 6 and 8 feet in one season. Super sized leaves for the first couple of years when you do that. And then, stand back because in 3 to 4 years' time, you're going to have major fruit and flower production.
Yeah.
All right?
It's worth the wait.
It's worth the wait, okay, to do that little bit of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So, golden elders, the same idea. It could be, I don't know if this particular person is growing the golden elder, which is what in Newfoundland is called the golden alder, right? But it's a golden elderberry. Or she's growing the actual edible elders, okay, elderberries. So, which only have green leaves. But same thing if you have the golden elder. And now, of course, there's purple-leaved elders out there as well, which have beautiful dark purple leaves, almost like a Japanese maple.
Oh, beautiful.
And they also benefit from this real hard pruning every, 4 to 5 years. And botanically, we call that coppicing. Okay, when you coppice a shrub is when you give it a real hard prune almost down to the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, and that will encourage lots of flush and new growth, and then lots of flowers in subsequent years. Usually, the first year you're going to sacrifice your flowers when you do that, but you'll find that in 2 or 3 years' time you're going to have gangbusters of flowers. Spirea respond really, really well to this type of pruning as well.
Yeah, I find. Off topic a little bit, but when I give my hair a good cut,
there
it grows back even stronger. Sometimes you got to sacrifice.
Your hair is just like the plants, right?
A good watering, a good trim. There you go.
Yeah.
I got another text here now. I need to move an upright cedar tree.
Okay.
Is it too late to do this in this time of year? It's about 10 feet tall now and planted too close to the house.
Right. Okay. So, no, this is not the right time of the year for doing that.
Okay.
All right. I find here in Newfoundland, I don't like to transplant any kind of evergreen material in the fall of the year.
Okay.
Okay. I always find it works better in the spring. If it's a deciduous shrub or a deciduous tree that's, about to lose its leaves now any day, they can be moved. I still prefer to do it in the spring, but they can be moved this time of year if need be. And it might set them back a little bit, but they usually recoup. But I find the evergreens, once you start damaging a lot of roots, and if this is 10 feet tall, that's going to have a huge root ball. So even next spring, she's going to have a challenge to get a cedar that large moved. Okay, so I'll give her a heads up now that it may or may not work. I know if it's only 4 to 5 feet high, well then you might have a fighting chance. But once you get 10 feet, that bush has probably been there for a long time. Yeah. Right. So a word of caution to homeowners out there when we do. Well, I haven't done courses, but I know Megan, who works with me at the garden, and she's a guest here on the Signal Gardening as well. She was a landscaper for many years. So she'll be the first to tell you, you always have to keep an eye on where you're planting a new shrub, right? Because so many new gardeners plant shrubs too close to their house. Yeah. Whether it's a cedar too close to your house or, God forbid, like a tree too close to your house, because that's even more problematic because they're going to have big roots compared to what a cedar is going to have. And, of course, the other problem is that you got to look overhead for overhead hanging wires, right? Because so many people will plant an evergreen or plant a tree and it can only get up to 10 or 15 feet. Next thing you know, it's into telephone wires or it's into electrical wires. And then you got to be pruning the crap out of your poor old tree, and it never looks the same anymore, especially if you have a conifer. If you had to cut off that leader, then it's game over. I mean, the tree just looks horrible, right? Horrible. So, as a new gardener, if you're, a new homeowner, always look overhead. See, make sure there's no wires. There's nothing that's going to get in the way of your trees and your shrubs. Always read up to how big it's going to get. And except if you're putting any kind of shrubs close to your house as a foundation, make sure you leave enough space that tree then or shrub can get larger and develop the way it's supposed to grow. Yeah,
and those roots can often be very harmful for the foundation of a house.
Exactly,
right?
Or they can get into, if you have a septic system or whatever, it can be really, really problematic as well, right? Yeah. So, being prepared for that in advance will help to solve any future problems.
Yes, in future you will be thanking you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We got a caller on the line there now, Todd. Karen's in St. John's. Hi, Karen.
Hi there.
How you doing?
Good. Considering the rain.
Yeah, right. It's so dark and drizzly, but I guess we need it. We had such a dry summer. What's your question today there, Karen?
Oh, hi, Todd. Todd, I have one of the most beautiful ornamental lilies. I I know you walked by my house one day. I live around the corner from you, and you were admiring them. Orange, beautiful lilies. And this little red bugger of a beetle has destroyed them in the last 2 years.
Yep.
And I've been picking them off, and, they fall off so easily.
Yes,
you can hardly
right.
catch them. So next spring, when those little leaves come up again, what the heck am I going to do?
Unfortunately, there's no cure for lily leaf beetle. It's a new pest that's only reared its ugly head here in the last 4 or 5 years. We have them at the botanical garden. I have them in my own garden. They do love Asiatic lilies more so than Orientals. So I think yours are Asiatic because yours are the orange ones.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
And so they really love Asiatic lilies. I find that the Orientals, which are the ones that flower late in summer with the big saucer-shaped, really fragrant pink or white flowers, they'll go after those too, but that's sort of their secondary source. They much prefer the Asiatic lilies instead. It's all you can do is be proactive. Go out each day, checking on them. I just go out. I get great satisfaction hearing that crunch when I squat them between my fingers, And like you say, they drop to the ground, right? That's their way of trying to protect themselves from predators. So you got to sort of, start rooting around the base of your plant. If you see any of the beetles, then pick them up and squat them before they get a chance to lay their eggs. Now, if they're larvae, usually strip the leaves, and the larvae hang out underneath the leaves. And they're very slimy. They almost look like bird poop. Okay, and it's just horrid to grab it. But I just use my fingers. But I mean, maybe you might want to put a pair of surgical gloves or whatever on because it's really, really messy to do that. But I find nothing else works, right? And I've been, by being active and getting at it like every second or third day, checking my lilies, I can seem to keep against it. I get a little bit of damage, but the lilies still manage to flower for me and still survive. So, and unfortunately, those lily leaf beetles are on the go for the entirety of the summer. Like they start cropping up in June and they're still around in September.
Do you think they'll pass?
No, I hate to say.
No.
And it's amazing how they can find the lilies because, we're up the botanical garden. We're pretty isolated up there on the top of the hill from most of the city, and yet the beetles found our few little lilies up there. Now they really love our Martagon lilies that are in the Heritage Garden. And I wouldn't have a lily up there if I never just kept at them constantly. So in the future now, I'm not planting any extra lilies. I got enough lilies now to try to keep an eye on without planting any extra ones. But it's really unfortunate. And I suppose the only saving grace, if there is a saving grace, is they don't seem to affect anything else other than lilies, right?
Yeah.
So they don't bother
Should I dig them up? Should I dig up the bulbs and just, I don't know, store them for a little while?
No,
Maybe
that's
plant
not.
them somewhere else?
No, that makes no difference. They can smell them out. They have, that they are specific. Okay, so and a lot of insect pests that we have are very specific, and they smell. They have their keyed in to smell a lily. Now we don't smell the foliage, but they can smell the foliage. It's like a cabbage white butterfly. It can find a cabbage or a cabbage relative plant, from miles away. They can smell into it. So the lily leaf beetles do the same thing. So it's either you don't grow lilies anymore, or you just got to be really proactive, keep an eye on them, and hope for the best.
And they usually come out in June. They start around June.
Usually they'll start to see them in June. And at that point then, of course, the plants are not in bud. It's just a flush of leaves. And they're more noticeable then because they sit right in the very center of that little flush of leaves.
Yeah.
Right? And, of course, then as soon as you go near them, they'll drop to the ground. So you got to be, you want to keep sort of a little bit of an open area underneath the lilies so it's easy then for you to see them growing on the ground, crawling on the ground.
Right.
Because they are very easily visible. That's the great thing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I've been battling those little red buggers for a couple of years now, Karen.
Yeah.
Good luck with it, my dear.
No, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
That was Karen in St. John's. You got any questions? You want to give us an update? This is The Signal. I'm Amanda Gear. We still got a few minutes left, so you have time to get your calls or texts in. Call us 709-722-7111 and 1-800 563-8255 or shoot us a text 709-327-8206. So we're moving along quite well here. And speaking of pests, are there any pests that we should be worrying about now overwintering our gardens? Like, let's say, that rodent that gets around our gardens and chews our spuds and all of our things.
It's I've been hearing more and more all the time about people having problems with rats. And in my own garden in St. John's, the problem now in the last 2 falls is the rats are digging into my ground to dig up my crocuses and my tulip bulbs. So, I mean, on the mainland, of course, it's squirrels, the gray squirrels. And like, thank God we don't have gray squirrels here in Newfoundland. But now we have other gray things, which are just as bad as the gray squirrels.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't believe that rats would dig into the garden to dig up, old crocus bulbs and tulip bulbs that I had left in my
brazen.
garden. And of course, at the botanical garden, we were talking earlier before the show that the rats were digging into our potatoes. And then I mentioned to you that they crawled up the corn stalks and started eating the ears of corn.
Oh my gosh.
So it's getting ridiculous for the scenario when it comes to rats. So and it's hard to keep against them. It really is. It's just one of these things. And I don't know how people are keeping compost piles going. I mean, I'm blaming at the botanical garden. Of course, we do have compost. We've been composting for years. Mm-hmm. So we've always had rats over in that part, which is not in the nursery part. It's across the street from where the main vegetable garden is. But I guess the rat population is so good over there now that they're crossing Mount Si Road and coming over to the area where we're growing all the veggies. You think there'd be enough groceries on the other side of the road to keep them happy over there without coming over to my side of the road.
Yeah.
And where are they to? In my own garden in St. John's, I have no idea where they're hanging out to during the daytime.
Yeah.
God only knows. I mean, I'm sure they got burrows here and there and everywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's being a problem.
They're sneaky.
They're sneaky little buggers.
Yeah.
And, I get a scattered mouse in my house. Thank God I don't get rats in the house. This is all bad enough. I have some little tiny hole somewhere in my foundation, and I've searched and searched. And do you think I can find that? No bloody way.
No.
So every fall, starting now, about every 2 or 3 weeks, a mouse will find its way into the basement. But it's easy to keep against them. At least you can catch them in a trap. Yeah. But rats are a lot more tricky.
They really are.
Yeah.
I've had both problems in my house that I lived in Topsail. I had a couple little mice in my cupboards every now and then, and rats out in my garden. And every year I would try to find, where are these rats living? Because the mice didn't bother me, but those rats.
I mean, mice outdoors,
pests.
like who cares, right? They're not doing any really damage to say. But rats can cause. I mean, I'm seeing the holes dug into the flower beds. It's like, what in the heck is going on here? But then I can see, that's where I had the tulip bulbs, or that's where I had my crocuses. Yeah. Now, they won't touch hyacinths and they won't touch daffodils because they're both poisonous.
Oh, well, they're smart
there
that way.
There you go, right? They're smart that way. So if you, any listeners out there, if you have problems with rats eating your crocuses and tulips, then grow hyacinths and daffodils instead.
There you go, a natural poison. We got John on the line there now, Todd. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're doing great. How you doing today, buddy?
Good, not too bad. It's a bit wet out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about tulips and daffodils. Have you got to take up the bulbs and dry them in the winter?
No. All you do with the tulips and daffodils, you're going to buy them this time of year, whether you buy them in the Walmart or at a nursery. Plant them in the garden now. They will come up in the spring flower for you. And then at that point, if you can leave them in the ground, if you just leave them in the ground, oftentimes they'll come back year after year like every other perennial.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you had to dig them up and throw them in newspaper in the box and then re-nourish them, right?
Yeah, no, not at all. Actually, if you leave them in your ground, let the foliage die back on their own. Don't cut the foliage off. And if you let the foliage die back on your own, they should come back every year for you.
Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not too bad, right? Yeah, and you say they're poisonous for the rats?
For the daffodils, the rats won't eat them, right? They'll just ignore them. They know that's poisonous, so they won't touch it. And if you're living in an urban or in a rural area, we have a problem at the botanical garden with rabbits as well that go in and they love tulips, but they don't dig up the bulbs. They just eat the sprouts as soon as they come up in the spring of the year. But again, rabbits won't touch daffodils, so I grow mostly daffodils at the garden now, and nothing seems to bother them because they're toxic to most herbivores.
Oh, okay. And what do the rats eat? The sprouts on the top?
No,
Or
they dig down, eat the bulb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they get rid of it.
Yeah.
Just something you mentioned earlier too when you were talking about composting.
Yep.
You said 6 or 6.5 or something.
Oh no,
What
that was about lime. If you're liming your garden, you want to try to bring your pH of your soil up around for your lawns. They like a pH around 6 to 6.5.
Oh, pH.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you test that for yourself? How do you?
There are little tests that you can buy. I think the nurseries and even the box stores will sell soil acid tests. You just follow directions on the bag, and you can find out exactly what your pH is.
Oh, okay. I thought it might be a pH strip or something like that, right?
Well, I think that's part of the test.
Oh, okay.
Will be the pH test, yeah.
Okay, put a bit of soil on the strip or something.
Yes,
I guess.
yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jen. Oh, sorry, bud. We got another caller to get to there now. Hope we answered all your questions for you. Bob Fitzpatrick is on the line. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hello, Amanda. How are you?
Doing well, my buddy. What do you got for us today?
And Todd, how are you today?
I'm good.
Well, I want to talk about two things:
Okay.
rats. Now, we live just below O'Brien's farm,
Oh yes.
and then of course on the other side of us is it's a river.
Right.
So we're in rat country.
Oh, yes.
Now what they've done before we figured it out, they actually went down under, tunnel up under, and up into our compost.
Oh yes. Okay.
So we sorted that out by laying down two by two patio stones.
Okay. Yeah.
So they got and the compost bin is resting on that. And we also use some chicken wire.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a job getting at it now.
Right on. Excellent. And like I said,
However-
that's the only way you can do it, because if you have a compost that's just sitting on the ground, you can forget it. I
Right.
mean, the rats are just going to have a field day.
So that's a tip for anyone else.
Yeah.
And they also got into our. They actually dug into our potatoes and dug them up and got them.
Yes, and same thing at the Botanical Garden this year. They actually, first time I've ever seen it happen, that the rats actually dug into the ground and ate the potatoes.
Yeah, clever little bastard.
Oh, I tell you.
I'll move on to the holly. Holly.
Yep.
Two questions now regarding holly. Should I wait until the spring to prune it, because it's growing every which way but loose?
Right. Yep.
Or can I do it now?
You can do that now. And in fact,
Okay.
if you're really on the ball, you can wait until November, and then you can use the branches for Christmas decorations.
That was my next question, because we got some beautiful berries on some of the bushes. How long would they last once we cut them and clip them and bring them inside?
Yep. So if you keep them in the water, usually the berries will last on them for weeks. Right?
Okay.
So I would wait. I mean, we don't generally get any snow to speak of around here that sticks around until well into December
Right.
anyway. So I think if you waited, harvested your branches and your berries in the early part of December, they'll last right through Christmas for you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for that. And Todd, I just want to say congratulations for getting onto that. Can you? What was it again?
Oh, the North American Rock Garden Society.
The North American Rock Garden. Wow. Good on you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, enjoying your show. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too, Amanda. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, those rats seem to be plaguing a lot of people this year, and they're getting more and more clever every single year.
Yeah. And as Bob mentioned there, the rivers. I mean, here in St. John's, we have so many streams. between Rennie's River in particular and Larry's Brook, and that just it's rat highways, right?
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, for any of us who live anywhere close to these rivers, it's problematic for sure.
I got a couple of texts. We're rounding out the show here. We got a few minutes left, so I'll fire a few of these texts at you. See what you got.
Okay.
This person says, we have 2 burning bushes getting way out of control. Is it wise to cut them right down to the largest branch? And when is a good time to prune?
Okay, so you can prune those now if you wanted to. You might want to wait until the foliage falls off so you can to enjoy the nice bright red leaves right now. But then as soon as the foliage is gone, you can give them a hard prune. I wouldn't coppice them because they do have a tendency to grow up on a single stem, and then you get like the round ball, right? So just take all those outer branches and sort of bring them in towards the center. But it still maintain a round shape to the bush, but basically bring it maybe from like 5 feet across down to like 2.5 feet across.
Great advice.
Yeah.
And where should you prune the tip? Like when you're pruning them, where should you cut? Is there a specific like node that you should be looking
usually
at?
it's where you see branches form.
Okay.
So you sort of come in where another branch is starting to branch back off again. You don't want to be leaving nubs, like sort of dead nubs sticking out.
Yeah. I did that before and it looked terrible.
Yeah.
I think I've learned all my gardening through my mistakes, Todd.
And that's how we learn.
And I find it so much fun, right? Because then when it works out, it's rewarding.
Exactly.
I got another text here.
Okay.
I have a couple of burning shrubs that have gotten too big. Same type of a
thing.
question.
Yep.
Can I cut them back now? And if so, how by how much?
Yeah.
So same thing.
Same idea. Generally speaking, I don't like to bring them back any more than half to what their size is now.
Okay.
Right. So if it's a bush that's already like say 5 feet across, bring it down to about 2.5 feet across.
Okay.
Right, and that'll be good then for another probably 4 or 5 years before it gets up to the 5 foot span again. Right.
Perfect. Yeah. Again, gotta trim it back to let it grow.
Yeah.
Just like your hair.
Yep.
One more text now. I have a 20-foot maple in front of my patio blocking my view. How much can I cut off the top without killing the tree?
Okay, it's a maple. It's a weed. You can cut that to the ground and it'll come back up again. It's very, very difficult to kill a maple.
It certainly is.
Right, so you prune away.
Okay.
Bob's your uncle.
And I got one email to get to here now. This person, Daryl, says to me, recently I've been scanning online websites for non-native trees that may do well here in Newfoundland. Curious if trees like giant sequoia, coastal redwood, things like that would actually grow in our climate. Looking for something interesting just to try.
Okay, so I wouldn't. We at the garden we have an western red cedar, and it's growing gangbusters. Okay, so that's doing really, really well for us. And I can remember when that was planted when I first started working at the garden. So it's only been there for probably about 15 years, and now it's already, I'd say, close on 25 feet tall. Wow. So it grows really, really fast. Giant sequoia. And the redwoods, they're not reliably hardy here. Unless you have a really, really sheltered spot, maybe down in Waterford Valley or someplace out in CBS, you might get away with them. But you just need one cold winter, and that could do them in.
Okay.
But the western cedar has been pretty reliable. If you're looking for a really fast-growing conifer, either a Norway spruce or a Sitka spruce. Because they're both, the Sitka spruce is a western species, gets really, really big. That grows surprisingly well here in Newfoundland. If you're not familiar with what they look like, just go down to Torres Cove. Okay. And for some strange reason, I don't know if it was Philip Hicks, who lived down Torres Cove years ago as a gardener, that spread all the Sitka spruce around, but the whole community is full of Sitka spruces, and some of them are monsters down there, and they're doing really, really well. It's a really beautiful looking spruce tree.
Yeah.
So, those are a couple of suggestions.
Yeah.
If he's looking for something that's really exotic, then go with like Chinese dogwoods, do really well here. And there are several magnolias that do quite well here. And we grow a beautiful tree we're growing up in the garden now called a Stewartia. And the Stewartias, people didn't think would grow here. And the one at the garden now, we grew it from seed, and it's up now about 15 feet tall and never looked back.
Excellent.
So those are some suggestions for him. Yep.
Now, one last thing before we leave, and I always like to ask experts this. Okay. What's the biggest mistake you see people making in their garden?
Biggest mistake is
especially this time of year.
Well, I don't know about this time of year, but the biggest mistake is that most of us generally don't develop enough soil. We're trying to grow things in gravel. Right? And we have no soil here in St. John's, so you've got to do a lot of work to make sure you have proper soil, because your plant is basically all reliant upon the soil to keep it happy. Yeah. Happy soil, happy plant.
And where can we get happy soil?
You've got to make it.
Okay.
You've got to make it.
With our composting.
Your composting. Okay. I mean, you can go out and purchase soil from different vendors or whatever. If you are going down that road, Triple Mix is probably the best one, because that's got soil, sand, and peat or compost mixed with it already, so it's ready to go. And then if you add your own compost to it, whether it's your own compost or whether you're going to a nursery and buying composted material, then you're off to a great start.
Wonderful show. Yeah. As we head out now, I appreciate you, Todd. I always appreciate your advice in our conversations.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining in and for all of your questions today. Coming up tomorrow, Bernice Hillier will be in the host chair because Adam is still gone. And as we get into the colder winter months, we'll be talking about heat pumps. That's tomorrow on The Signal.